I said, cheer up, things could be worse. So I cheered up, and sure enough, they get worse. You cheerful cherub. Here we are, David. Hey, what a... Hi.
Let's do this.
Good morning. Welcome to Veterans for Peace. My name is David Ross. I'm a South Burlington and University of Vermont graduate. I worked in medical sales most of my life, and I'm retired now. I volunteered twice and served 2 tours of duty with the 1st Infantry Division as a combat medic in Vietnam. No, you can't begin to imagine, but my conclusion from my experience, not only in the Vietnam War, but all the subsequent wars, is war is not the answer. I'd like to introduce Jim Ramey from ISO, International Socialist Organization. We're going to talk about the important work that this group is doing and learn about its history, its goals, how it operates, and so on. So, Jim, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Jim Ramey. I live in Burlington, live and work in Burlington, and I've been organizing with the International Socialist Organization for 15 years now.
Dave?
15 years.
15.
My other brother, Dave.
Dave Ransom, and I'm not a Vermonter. I came from Connecticut, and we came up here in 1998, back again. We were here before 1958, and we saw 3 school merger problems and other problems. And back in 1990, I had just had it because I've been a peacenik all my life, and here again was Daddy Bush going into Iraq. And I said, I've had enough. I'm not doing enough of my little life. And there are probably a lot of you out there like that. You just feel like you want peace, you want things to happen well, but maybe there's something more you can do. So we got on the telephone and got in touch with remarkable people like Dave Ross and our dear friend Bert and Peter Diamondstone and others, some who've passed on, and started a little chapter in Vermont. And boy, am I glad we ever did it. So this is one day we can celebrate.
There's an interesting thought that came into my mind when you mentioned George Bush.
What?
An interesting thought came into my mind when you mentioned George Bush.
Oh, God.
He sits up there in his lovely home by the sea in Kennebunkport, Maine.
Oh, yeah.
He told a lie.
Yeah.
He said Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. Well,
Yeah.
we've got so many more in different types. We still have the world's largest supply of nerve and blood gases and diseases. Oh, we're destroying our stockpiles, but we're doing it very slowly.
But he didn't tell just one lie.
So, no, but I'm just saying we have more weapons of mass destruction than anybody else by far.
Oh.
And also, Bush said that he was supporting radical fundamentalist Islamic militants and terrorists. Now, there's 2 thoughts behind this. First of all, when the inspectors went in, they found none of these alleged weapons of mass destruction. And there were so many inspectors, so all over the place, that the CIA apparently didn't even have time to plant ones for them to find. The second thing is on his support for Islamic fundamentalism or terrorism. No way. He was the absolute dictator, and as a very close friend of mine put it, as long as you kept your mouth shut, you could have a very nice life.
Yeah.
Free medicine, free education, anywhere in the world. Go to Harvard, go to London School of Economics. The government paid for it. Yes, we have very poor people and we have very rich people, but we never had hungry people until you imposed the sanctions. I was a child when the sanctions came. It hurt my health. It hurt everybody. But you have to realize, as an absolute dictator, he told the mullahs, you stay in the mosque, you preach the word of God as you like, I will not interfere. Possibly sometime you will say something nice about me. Whatever else, I am working very hard to improve our country. But if you go against me, or anyone goes against me, you are the word of God, I am the politics of this country. You do not interfere in the politics. If you do, we will have a nice conversation once.
What? Yeah.
The second time, we will take you, and that's it.
Is that where we're
He
going?
did not put up.
Is that where we're
He
going?
did not, let me finish. He did not put up
Yeah.
with any type of radical Islamic anything.
Yep.
And the ones that were sent in to
Oh,
try to cause
absolutely.
problems,
Yep.
they all ended up drying on top of the desert sand with a bullet in the back of their
Sure.
head. So that war was started with a lie. Lyndon Johnson said that we were attacked in the Gulf of Tonkin. We weren't.
We
It was a
weren't.
lie.
That was
All these wars,
Is there any
the
president?
wars in South and Central America, every one of them started with a lie.
Yeah. And is there any
So-
president who hasn't lied to us?
You look at all the things ISIS has done: burned people alive, put them in cages, and dumped them underwater, taken gays and thrown them off 5-story buildings, shot people, mass executions. Just a couple hundred people go down the line with machine guns. Everything ISIS has done, all that destruction now in several countries, not just Iraq, but Syria has come out of this, the rest of it. And who are we supporting? Saudi Arabia and Yemen?
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh.
and the President Trump is saying, you better show us some democracy and this and that. Who are our best allies?
Yeah.
They are absolute kings, and they cut off anybody's head they like, and if you don't like it, they'll cut your head off.
Sure.
So anyway, so much for George Bush sitting there with all these sliced, cut off heads and everything, all from George Bush and from Colin Powell's speech at the United Nations. And most people don't know that Colin Powell started his meteoric rise to power by being assigned the task of covering up the My Lai massacre. Well, he didn't succeed. He
That's
was
horrible.
endgamed from several directions,
Yeah.
especially by Seymour Hersh and the photographs that came out.
And as you know, My Lai wasn't the only one.
My Lai was only one of many, many massacres.
Yeah.
So again,
Is that the world we want?
well,
Nope.
I'm just saying, I've learned through time that whatever my government says, I automatically assume it's a lie and think the opposite, unless I can be shown and it can be documented they actually told the truth. Once in a while, they slip up and they do tell the truth.
I can't see that Bill Clinton was any better.
So let's talk about
Even
ISO.
Jimmy Carter.
How did ISO get started?
Oh, well, as a national organization, we started back in 1977.
77.
As a kind of split from the International Socialists, who were propagating a line about going back into the factories, and that was an important thing. We thought we were a little bit more pessimistic and thought there needed to be a bit of a retreat, and turns out we were right, proven right on that.
Yeah.
In the 80s, kind
I mean,
of proved that
increasingly you
out.
ask what factories.
Yeah. So you know, that's a little of the backstory. In Burlington, we started back in 2000, and that when we really got involved in the Nader campaign in 2000.
Well, now, in 77, was that a reaction to any political happenings, or was it a social realization? How did that newness develop?
Well, I wasn't around. I wasn't around in 77, but there definitely it was a period of kind of what is the socialist movement in the United States going to be doing at this point, and there were differences of opinions, and there needed to be a kind of split to go forward. And people tried different things, and the 80s were a bad period for most of the socialist organizations were wrecked in the 80s, and we only held on by a little bit. And again, I wasn't involved in this stuff, but I was, but I know from talking with the organizers from the TISO, and so we kind of reemerged during the Gulf War, and we were able to kind of get a core of a larger core of activists organizing around the first Gulf War, then taking up the death penalty fight in the 90s, and then the global justice movement in the late 90s and 2000s, starting with the battle in Seattle, and then
People know about that, the Battle of Seattle.
the struggle against the World Trade Organization, where Teamsters and Turtles was the big slogan at the time, where the union activists and environmentalists got together and saw that this corporate globalization was just capitalism on steroids, and the next phase of allowing capital over to have free reign over borders, but not people. So that was '99, and then we've been ups and downs throughout the last decade, which has been hard to get your head around because of all the massive demonstrations that we've seen, the tanking of those demonstrations, the war being opposed in a way that the biggest protest in human history was on February 15th, 2003, and then the war went ahead, and the majority of the movement got behind a pro-war Democratic Party in 2004. So,
which is a sort of pathetic comment on the level of evolution of their political stance.
Yeah, right. So, and I think that's a big thing of what we're trying to do is build up an independent politics that is not based so much on elections, but really building up a cadre of organizers who know the ins and outs of American politics and can actually build a resistance movement that is both independent and based in the majority of the majority standing up for themselves.
And how do you do that?
Well, it's a difficult task because of the ideological battle that we have right now. It's so much of what passes for politics is just, getting a job with an NGO or getting a job with the Democratic Party, who are unable to pay their bills in Vermont right now. But it's the kind of professionalization of resistance is a real problem, and you have to be able to speak your mind, and for the professionalization of it, you have to be able to appeal to corporations who can give you money and give you grants. And
which is a big problem that the movement. When I say the movement, it's all the different groups that sort of have a progressive tilt, looking to a more equitable future for everybody, in terms of race, religion, equal opportunity, resolving class issues. In other words, creating an opportunity for a better world. So it includes the women's movement, the veterans movement, socialist, communist, anarchist, people involved in the health movement, the environmental movement. It's all of these different movements, groups, and organizations that are working to improve what I call the life of the world, or the life of the people. That is sort of subsumed under the rubric term, the movement. So.
Right, yeah. So where were we?
It's not a formal organization. It's a collection of organizations that have disagreements, but overall are like-minded. And also they have a tendency to understand, at this point at least, that the answers are not going to come from the Republican Party. They're not going to come from the Democratic Party. It's time to move on. I sometimes fantasize that I would be in front of the McCarthy hearings, and they would look at me and say, "Are you now, or have you ever been a member or activist in any, blah, blah organization?" I would reply, "No, sir, I've never been either a Democrat or a Republican."
Yeah. So, I think that right now, in the past year, there's been this explosion of growth in the socialist movement with the Democratic Socialists of America, who actually have a chapter in Burlington and are doing pretty well. and that's been really a promising and very interesting thing. They're a good organization. I think a more moderate version of socialism than the ISO, but they're reintroducing the politics of socialism to a kind of new generation that really doesn't have any experience with Stalinism, with the Soviet Union, and all of that stuff. So it's very good, and I think that has everything to do with the Sanders campaign that happened in 2016. It's that he didn't run away from the term socialist. Big disagreements on what socialism means with Bernie Sanders, of course, but that was a good thing, and that was.
How do you define that? The disagreement, the differences.
Well, one of the big things is the kind of he doesn't call it national socialism because that's something else.
Yeah.
But a kind of nationalist, a kind of socialism based on nationalism, and that he thinks that the United States is a force for good in the world. He just gave the speech around Korea and basically.
Bernie you're talking.
Yes, Sanders. Yeah, and it was about resuscitating kind of a liberal imperialism for the next period, and it means cooperation with leaders, but it also means bombing, and he's shown that he's for every military budget and for every most of the bombings and wars that have happened.
And
as well.
sadly, and you have to make a clear distinction between Jews and Israel.
Yeah,
You
right.
can be anti-Israeli, and I am, but a lot of my friends are Jews, have been, will be. They're not the same thing. In fact, there's a group here in Vermont, Jews for a Just Peace in Palestine, Israel. We've had them on the show a couple of times.
Right.
Yeah.
What Israel has done, basically they've cut Palestine into two sections, so they're almost like two Palestines that don't even have a land bridge. They've cut them off. Palestine is supposed to be an independent country, but everything that comes in and out of there is inspected by the Israelis. They put bans on things. They have blown the crap out of their cities, killed, slaughtered their people, and they keep taking more land, and eventually they just want to push the Palestinians into the sea.
Yeah.
And that is what we oppose. And Bernie has never, and that's been one of my big problems with Bernie. God bless his soul on everything else. But he votes for every bill to give them more military support and has said nothing about curtailing their continuing attacks and essentially, I guess, almost on the edge of genocide of the Palestinian people. At the end of World War II, it was decided that the Jews needed a homeland because of what the Nazis did to them. Well, it wasn't just them, it was also the Ramey, or more commonly referred to as the Gypsies. It was the Poles, it was all the Soviet prisoners. It wasn't just the Jews who went up the smokestacks. And the Israelis, homes, property and bank accounts confiscated. So all of a sudden, we're watching the victims, the children of the victims of the Holocaust doing to the Palestinians, sort of like what the Nazis did to them, short of actually building crematoria and mass executions. But my God, you see things on YouTube, bunch of Israelis clapping and cheering and very happy, sitting on a hill with a picnic, and down on, a couple of miles away, you're watching the Israeli Air Force drop white phosphorus, which permanently poisons the water in the ground, burns people alive, sets buildings on fire. Maybe the most horrible weapon, along with napalm, ever devised. It just burns people to death. The thing about phosphorus is, when it gets on you, it burns through. It doesn't. You can't scrape it out. You can't put it out with water. It generates its own oxygen. It's like, the great incendiary. And these people are watching them burn this whole section of this city, just burn it. Men, women, kids, buildings, everything, poisoning the earth forever. And they're up there having a picnic, just enjoying the heck out of it.
Yeah.
That's what disgusts me. How dare they celebrate Holocaust Memorial Day and this and that and turn around and do this to other people.
Yeah.
Bernie, I mean, it's one of the great injustices of the world, and you do not see it in our media because we do a lot of business. Even Ben & Jerry's does business with Israel.
Yep.
Israel's a small country with a big economy.
Lots of
Bernie has
armaments.
absolutely been silent on the issue.
Yeah. Well, there are lots of armaments, and you know what I see in that whole thing too, Dave and Jim, is the arrogance of power that comes throughout history. You know, you get people in control, and there's the arrogance of power.
Well,
and
Trump and Netanyahu together, they are the stellar objects of our generation. is the living definition of the arrogance of power.
Really?
They make me like people like Putin.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
Yeah. But here's the whole black movement that we should be very close to in this country, because it's so clear. It's not that we were the only country in the world that imposed slavery. That goes back in history a long time. But the attitude that imposes slavery upon any people or any group of people develops the attitude that, like Bernie and Pat and Peter exhibit today when they support the F-35.
Yeah.
But apparently they don't connect the dots.
Right.
and one
don't
dot nobody
see that.
talks about is birth control. There are too many people in the world, too many people on their way.
Yeah.
And the weight of human existence on the planet is becoming unsustainable. That results in famine, starvation, epidemics of mass diseases. And none of us are talking about population control, which is one of that and global warming are the two biggest issues right now in terms of long-term hopes for this planet. And we're just not dealing with these issues at all.
Yeah, I mean, population control is. I think that rich people need to be held accountable for the waste that they produce. Like this is the most environmentally destructive country, the United States, and I think a lot of the population control arguments do kind of put it on Africa and put it on India and China and just say that you guys need to control.
Get your act together.
Exactly.
And then people whine back. Well, if you guys had power, our taxes would just go up and up. I saw a wonderful interview with a woman from Denmark, and she says, "I'm a doctor. My husband's an engineer." Compared to the average person, we make a lot of money because we are professionals and we're top professionals in our fields. However, the government takes most of it in taxes. Nevertheless, we have a lovely home. We each have a very nice car. We can go out and enjoy some entertainment and buy a few luxuries. And what do we get for this, for paying most of our income in taxes? We don't have poor people. We don't have criminals. We're not afraid of people killing us and taking things out of our house.
Right. Yeah.
We're not afraid of people sticking their hands out for money because there's always food. All the things that you fear and are upset and terrified about in the other first world countries, we don't have it here because everybody takes care of everybody. Everyone has an opportunity to do some kind of work, to make some kind of a contribution to society. And from this, we're more like a family than a bunch of strangers. She says, I really think that I get my money's worth from even paying as high a tax percentage as I do. What I get back, the value is inestimable. The other part is just money.
Right. Yeah.
And how does ISO address this?
And the president of
philosophy.
Iceland, who was a woman at that time, she was asked in an interview with her. What's sort of the basis of unity to create and get legislation passed through 3-year system in Reykjavik. She says, before we pass any education, we always ask one question. One question underlies the answer to everything. What effect will our decision have on the next and subsequent generations?
Bingo.
That's a question that's never asked here. Right now, I mean, American industry capitalism is literally murdering the planet.
Yeah.
Well, we can put in a pitch. We can put in a pitch for the Burlington title anyway of Seventh Generation.
Sure.
They try to get people to manufacture stuff under their title, and it's from a Native American saying that whatever we do, we want it to have good effect for 7 generations after us.
Yeah.
My house was built in 1788. Most of my furniture is from the end of the 1600s through the end of the 1830s. No, I'm not rich. I got it by buying, selling, and trading when I was out doing my work.
So you're out on the ladder.
So, I mean, they made things so well, they almost last forever.
Yeah.
And we've gotten away from that. I mean,
We
when
have.
you had to hand cut a board with a saw and then plane it to get it smooth instead of just running through a machine, whatever you made with it, excuse me, you put that same level of care into making furniture, making houses.
Yeah. Time.
We've become a society where everything's disposable.
Yeah, and that's a aspect
And
of
that
capitalism.
waste resources, big time.
Yeah, that's an aspect of capitalism because of built-in obsolescence. You have to buy other goods. You have to buy a new iPhone every 2 years. You know, you have to buy a new
And that's why the
cheap
war industry is so profitable.
every
You make a
20
bomb, you blow it up, you make another
Hey,
bomb.
you can get them in. Oh, yeah, we got
Yeah.
production going.
Yeah, permanent. Yeah.
So, if ISO,
Yeah.
by a miraculous act of divine intervention, was given the power, I don't want you to say power of dictatorship, because none of us like that word and it's inappropriate, was given the power of decision making, what changes would ISO make in the way things are done, at least here in the United States?
Well, so just the premise is like we need to build a movement that actually gives everyone the confidence to be able to advocate for themselves and all of that stuff and for their own interests. So
All that
no
stuff.
divine intervention, but say that we do are in power.
No, I'm painting a fantasy
Sure,
that you can interject your political view.
Of course,
into.
yeah. And I mean, make profit illegal would be the first thing I'd say, and then that takes down the system that we live in, So, and full unionization rights. Everyone is allowed to have democracy at work. Everyone's allowed to have free speech at work. That's been actually a really promising thing about the NFL protests that have been happening.
Yeah.
Has been that they're actually workplace actions.
What a blessing.
Yeah. So these. They're workplace actions where the big boss is telling them that they need to shut up and do their work, and so the popularity of these are very promising that this can actually go on. So unionization, stop use of oil, immediately have renewable energy. All of these things are incredibly important stuff that we need to do. But like you said, I mean, we need movements to do this.
Going with renewable energy is possibly the best job creating task that we could go after.
Yeah.
Yeah, oil is going to go down. It's going to go down. It has been going down anyway. But if you really created the type of workforce to go all out for wind, solar, geothermal, hydraulic, waters, it would put so many people to work and it would make energy so inexpensive.
But we can build F-35. The new military budget just added
it's about the only thing we're-
2 dozen more planes than the
It's about the only thing we're building anymore.
than the military asked for.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
oh my God.
Yeah.
Is this our idea of putting people to work? Isn't there something in terms of...
And it doesn't even add that many jobs, too. That's the other thing. And all of the studies
the
that have
amount of
happened.
money created by the military, industrial, whatever, the return on investment in terms of trickle down, trickle sideways, trickle up and out,
yeah.
it's much less than virtually any other segment of the economy.
Yeah, just have
It's sort of a dead end. You buy the thing and it goes to the bank and the shareholders, and it's kind of an economic dead end. It's not really creating wealth, it's just recycling it.
Yeah.
Oh, Reagan and Clinton and that whole cadre just reinforced that. So that's what we're stuck with now. We've got to change it.
Yeah.
How are we going to change it, Jeff?
Well, I mean, we build movements and connect movements. I think that there's this tendency to have, single issue stuff, and I'm only going to focus on this, and there's a good aspect to that, of course, that you need to know what you're talking about and have your spiel down and stuff. But we have to tear down the kind of silo activism that happens and have everyone connected in a real struggle, because that's the thing with Trump. I mean, Trump has really made it so that he's coming after all of us. He's coming after the immigrants. He's coming after workers. He's coming after the environment. He's coming after he doesn't even stop at veterans.
Anyone but me.
Yeah.
Don't come after me.
I mean, from childhood, I knew about racism. We went to eat at a White Castle burger place. It was like this new burger place. So we all jumped in our buddy's Henry J. car. I don't know if anyone in the audience would ever remember the Henry J. That made them for generations.
Oh, the Henry J. Yeah.
So we get to Burger King, and our friend John Chambers just happens to be black. A lot of people in Cincinnati are black. It was the lowest part of the Union, so it became a major escape route for slaves coming north.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I had black friends and neighbors. It wasn't any big deal. So we go in to get the burgers, and they said, "Welcome to welcome to White Castle."
White Castle.
Come,
Yeah.
but your friend will have to eat in the car.
White Castle.
It's like, because he was black. I mean, they were segregated. They didn't let black people come in to eat, but he could spend his money and eat out in the car.
Right.
Yeah.
So we had a big, ugly argument, and I'm not sure if they threw us out or we left. But one of the kids' parents had a business with a mimeograph machine. We made all these little posters, and we covered the town and the school. Don't eat at white asshole.
Yeah.
Nice.
An explanation. Well, we didn't desegregate them, but our moral argument was so strong we didn't get punished either.
Yeah.
That's one of those pathetic draws.
Great.
So that was always an issue for me, and I saw it in the Army. I had black and white friends in Germany.
Oh.
Outside the NCO clubs, all the white, the white racist, and all the black nationalists. You know what? And they're getting ready to have a rumble. And I got the white guys, "Come on, Dave," and I got the black guys, "Come on, Dave." And I'd say, "Hell with you, I'm going home. I'm going back to the barracks." I mean, stand in the middle and let you both let you all focus on beating the crap out of me, because I won't pick one side or the other. So after Vietnam, obviously, I was an anti-war activist in Vietnam, Vets Against the War. One of the first chapters was one I set up with some of my friends. Well, I met a woman named Karen DeCrow. She was one of the founders of NOW, the National Organization of Women. And she was, I think at that time, a law student at Syracuse. So we had a hell of a conversation. Okay, I'm in Germany. I buy a Volkswagen. It's got a seatbelt. Never saw a seatbelt. What's this? Keeps you from flying out of the car if you hit something. Made sense. I used it. She sat down and gave me a very precise, well-illustrated history of women in the world and the what she and the women's movement was. It made sense. I never had an argument. I didn't have a comeback. I just accepted what she said because she was right. Then it was the farm workers. Remember Jesse Clemens? No, he's before your time.
Okay.
So he and Gene Bergman and other people around here, doing work, the farm workers out in California, because they were just like so getting screwed, and they still
Cesar
are.
Chavez,
Then, it was the environment. And finally, you woke up one day and eureka! Everything is screwed up. It's all wrong.
Right.
For every topic you can mention, there's a better way.
Right. Yeah.
And that's where I got really overwhelmed, because I cannot be an expert in every field.
Yeah.
But when somebody else does a demonstration, I can go, I can make a sign, I can be part of the noise.
Right.
And I'm very much for two sides of things. I will suit and tie it with the Congress people. Jim Jeffords and I are the ones that are actually responsible for getting the legislation for post-traumatic stress. Treat, compensate, recognize. We got that done. Bob Stafford and I, we are the ones that changed the way the military does discharges. There's other pieces of legislation I've been working on for 20 years and they're not passed yet. But I will put on a suit and tie, and I will lobby, and I will wear that suit and tie in front of fraternal groups and anywhere I can go where that's necessary. But I will also get out in the streets and get arrested. I've been arrested over 20 times. I've been severely beaten by the police a number of times. I will do that too. It's not like one or the other, and it depends on where you are. Me, I don't have limits. I'll do what's necessary for social change, because in Vietnam, I saw the consequence of people not effectively being able to stop things. I have a vision. I mean, you think about like Puerto Rico and some of the islands right now.
That's right.
Or look at Bangladesh or places, look what happened in Thailand when the big wave came in. What if the U.S. military attacked? Yeah, they got big airplanes and they got tanks and armored personnel carriers. These things have got some traction. They'll go anywhere. Well, you got medical people. What if the whole military attacked and the bombers came over, the B-52s, and they dropped water and medical supplies and food? And the Marines took the beaches and got the docks going again and started building bridges. And the Army Corps of Engineers was building bridges and fixing the road. And we went in and we just fixed everything. As opposed to countries where we're continually going, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Chile, now Venezuela, just going and screwing everybody up. And when we can't buy the government we want to serve business interests, then we create a phony army of overpaid mercenaries to get it for us. And if that doesn't work, we just send our own military. They'll damn sure get it for us. So instead, and the world is in awe of America, but the world is also terrified of America, so terrified it keeps its damn mouth shut. You don't hear serious criticism from Germany, France, Italy, England, and so on against America. They love us, they depend on us, but they're scared of us too. They don't want us to turn on them because they know not what we can do, they know what we will do. So if you took the alternative and flipped it over, and every place there was some sort of horrible natural disaster, or something like a Rwanda, or what's going on now in Myanmar, formerly Burma, with the Rohingya people, genocide, the genocide in the Balkans. What if then, in those cases, the American armed forces went in full force and kicked butt and ended it? Or in these other disasters, we went in, we started fixing things, caring for people. The world would love us. I want to be loved. I'm an old guy. I need the love. I worked all my life, and started out thinking America was so wonderful, that America was like kind of like this. We fixed the world and held its hand when it was bloody and shaking. I found out that we're the ones that are making the world bloody and shaking.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I want the reality of America to live up to the dream and the vision of America that I grew up with as a kid. We can do this, but we are not going to do it through the Democratic Party. We are not going to do it with the Republican Party. They are so corrupt. They should be under the RICO legal statutes for graft and corruption and everything else. They should be made. These parties should be made illegal. They should be broken up, destroyed, and ended.
Yeah.
The Congress people, I'll vote for your bill if you'll vote for my bill. The bridge to nowhere in Alaska. I mean, come on. It's just, and people are giving up their vacations, their food on the table, their kids' possibility of further education, which in many other countries would be provided free. You know, we've got the money. Don't kid yourself. We have the money. We don't have the will because the rich people want it all. The rich people, that's what has to end.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we need a real political movement to take on. To take on the system, and I think that we're seeing the kind of questioning.
When you say
of all
political,
this
you don't
stuff.
just mean party.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'm talking about a movement that has the politics that can actually argue for and present a better world and a better system that we have, which isn't much of a challenge. I mean, it doesn't offer much to anyone except Donald Trump's kids. So
Yeah.
Yeah, you brought in this book that's
Yeah.
excellent.
Jim and I think Dave was there at that lecture put on by the Will Miller Social Justice Lecture Series. If I say it right, Kihanga Yamada Taylor
Yeah, that's right.
lectured to us.
King.
And she, her title of this latest book is From Black Lives Matter to Black Liberation. And my friend Offie Wortham is doing a interesting seminar. He's over in Johnson. He's built down at the UU Church in Montpelier, and they're addressing whatever happened to integration.
Yeah.
Instead of multiculturalism, whatever happened to integration?
Yeah.
Well, that whole thing says to anyone who's an oligarch, if they have any ounce of kindness in them that's possible, what about poverty? How are you going to address the poverty you're making?
Mm-hmm.
Whether we speak of it in military terms or social terms.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Like recently in this recent school, what do they call it, Act 46 or something, putting more schools together. I said to the school, I wrote a little thing into the state school committee. They probably put it in file 13. But I said, if you know these problems are developing, can't you develop a course so that the teachers and kids in school can address it into their civics course and come up with a solution, and then you sit back and and help it happen.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. Are there rich people out there? Are there oligarchs who have any kind of a conscience? Just not the next generation after the
Some
Rockefellers.
actually do, and some of the super rich actually make high percentage donations of their wealth to things.
But that's
they
not
are
enough.
such a minority.
It's
Yeah,
not. It's
yeah.
not enough.
And it's not. It's really the system that has to change
The
too.
system.
You know who
the
gives the
people,
most money to charity? Poor people.
Us.
Yeah.
Broke
Because they
people.
know what it is to have need. They know what it is to hurt.
Yeah.
If somebody like a Donald Trump gives $20 million to something, you say, "Oh my God, he's so generous."
Drop
And he
in the
doesn't.
bucket.
Well, it's maybe like 1/100% of his wealth, and he makes sure he gets lots of publicity.
Oh,
If a family that's living on $40,000 a year donates $100 over the course of the year as a percentage of what they have given from what they have coming in to give it from, it's way higher. And there have been a lot of studies done, and time after time they come out with the data, hard mathematical data, that poor people are more generous, they give more money to support different causes, whether it's save the whales or save the cancerous children.
Are you guys getting religious now, talking about the widow's mite on Sunday? It's an old truth, and in all the literature of all the spiritual powers that we can read through history, there are these little pieces of wisdom, and we just don't seem to get there. You got any answers to that?
Yeah,
Well,
reread the story of Jonah.
Oh, absolutely.
We get taken there.
Yeah, one of my favorite. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Or was that Pinocchio?
Yeah.
Well, I think that right now you see the kind of the way that the system is falling apart and how it's becoming the politics is becoming very polarized, and the moderates, in both in the parties and outside of the parties, their arguments aren't making sense, and and so you see the growth of the fascist movement. You see what happened in Charlottesville and this August, and how there's a real threat of a fascist movement, and it doesn't help. It helps a lot the right wing and the far right that Trump won't condemn these people, and he condemns the victims of a hurricane for not for wanting people to help them, rather than fascists in the streets marching for genocide is what they were doing. So
when Huey Long was governor of Louisiana, he said, if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come wrapped in the red, white, and blue and speak for the name of Jesus.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Yeah, and Trump doesn't know how to speak for Jesus, but he does whatever he can for that.
Well, I think he'd probably quote Jesus if it helped him.
If it's profitable.
And if he knew
Propaganda use of the Bible has been, and there's so many biblical people, churches that propagandize the Gospels and propagandize the prophets.
There's a whole thing now. Jesus and God want you to be rich.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And they've got these like 2,000 to 4,000 seat churches, and the guy's up there with a megaphone telling them it's okay to have money. It shows you're better than the others because God has smiled on you because you're a better person.
Yeah.
This is getting back to the ugliest aspects of the ancient Calvinism.
Oh, absolutely. And
your spirituality is measured by the success of your greed and how much you got.
Yeah.
Which means other people didn't get.
Yeah. There are today, too, many like synagogues who are adamantly and openly, overtly opposed to the Israeli government. There are, we were in the gay pride parade recently, and there are people from churches that have been there right from the first time. Mm-hmm. So there is that conscience.
You're the theologian. Was it Jesus or someone else that said it is easier for a camel to pass through a needle's eye than a rich man to enter the gates of heaven?
JC,
was that
right?
Christ?
Well, that's in the scriptures, yes.
Yeah, I can't remember where, but I'm thinking like all these rich people, I hope there is a hell. I hope there's a heaven. Because I want to see, I don't care if I get to heaven or not, I'll even go to hell if all these guys can be down. I can be screaming in my fire, but it'll almost be worth it to see them.
Lazarus.
Getting there.
Rich man and Lazarus is another one,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing I wanted to mention before we
people need to know how to contact you, how to get involved with your activities, and to learn from you guys.
Yeah. So
tell us more about the
our national website is socialistworker.org, and that's a daily news.
Socialistworkers.org.
Yep.
Even a person like me could find that.
Provided that you have the internet and everything. Yeah.
Provided my machine is still working,
Right.
and I have the money to do it,
Sure.
and some industrialist capitalist has made sure that I pay lots of
Yeah.
money to do it. Right.
And
It was a great joke when we were working with this network. I put in satellites for a few years. Don't ask, I got blacklisted from medical sales. But there were like three different little glowing things on the receiver. And this guy who seemed kind of paranoid and weird asked this friend of mine who was a technician. He was an Iraq combat vet. They said, "What do those three little lights do?" And he said, "Well, this one watches for the channel, this one watches for the signal strength, and this one watches you." And the guy freaked out and he threw him off the property. He told him, "Take it all out, get rid of it." But you know what? Your little camera on your computer, they can hack in, they can watch you.
on the phone.
So if you're doing
Have it every
something
day.
you don't want somebody to see, put a little piece of paper over it. Yeah.
Yep, that's a scary
I mean,
world.
So
And
say
your,
that again,
your
social.
television. I mean, they'll tell what they'll. He watches Democracy Now! Almost every day.
Watch
I
him.
mean, you talk about being spied on. It was bad under the Nixon era because I went through stuff for the FBI,
Oh.
and I mean, upfront and personal stuff. But I'll tell you, their ability to spy on people now is you do not have privacy. Forget it. It's an anachronism. It's something that they talked about when they wrote the Constitution. There's no privacy anymore.
Smile,
Trust me.
you're on candid camera. But I want to get back to Jim and get
Oh, so the national website is socialistworker.org. Locally, we have a website at vermontiso.org.
VermontISO.org.
Yeah,
And somebody like me could remember it, and
yeah. Just Google
Type
that
it
in, and you should see
right.
us, Vermont Socialists. You can Google that too. We're on Facebook at Vermont Socialists.
Facebook.
And, yeah.
Oh, that Dave's into that.
Burlington International Socialist Organization, and every Thursday we have meetings at 7 o'clock up at the UVM campus.
Yeah.
So every Thursday at 7 o'clock.
That's
Every
at
Thursday-
Lafayette Hall. Do you have
Yep.
signs up?
Lafayette 210. We usually
7
have
a.m. for
signs
breakfast.
up, yeah. 7 p.m. Did I say
7
7
p.m. after. All right.
Yeah, 7 p.m.
Hopefully after work.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Lafayette 210 UVM campus.
Yeah.
Go check them
All
out.
are welcome.
They're a good group of people.
Where is that that you meet?
At the UVM campus at Lafayette Hall.
At the UVM campus, Lafayette Hall.
Yeah. Yep.
Lafayette?
Yeah. Lafayette.
The French guy?
The was he a general? I don't know. Well, but anyway, yeah.
And what are you focusing on right now? Is there a particular focus?
It has been building an opposition to the right wing right now, and that
Building opposition to
the right wing, to the
Trump,
fascists.
the Nazis, the fascists, the religious zealots.
Yeah, there's some groups on campus right now that are oriented more on the right wing. Turning Point USA is one of the people that are saying that nobody wants healthcare. People want the freedom not to choose healthcare.
So are we just opposing them and speaking against, or are we trying to educate them and sensitize them to life?
Well, I think more what's important is organizing our own side, and
Organizing your own
those ideas don't have popularity right now.
Right.
There's an increasing popularity, but we have had a civil rights movement, an anti-war movement that has actually taken on these ideas effectively.
Yeah.
So there is the memory of that still, and there is the kind of institutional memory in education and stuff like that. So those ideas don't have as much cachet as they could, and I think that they will if there isn't an active left opposition to these ideas.
And do you take on the Trumpites and the Nixonites and the Clintonites and the people that just seem to be living in their own little world, even the Obamaites?
Yeah.
Do you take them on and debate with them and try to help them understand the world a little better?
Yeah, I mean, we've had actual debates with other student groups on campus. A lot of our members are students. I'm not, but a lot of the students have had those debates and taken that on. But So yeah, and I think any kind of outreach that we do, it has to be a kind of an open outreach, open
Yeah,
towards
yeah.
bringing people in and meeting people where they're at, and if it's really oppositional, having that debate and having that out. So
We have a grandson down in Memphis who's been out and organizing with people, and they, with the permission and the blessing of the local police and the government, they go over and they demonstrate by putting a shroud over some of the Confederate statues,
yeah, that's great.
just to say, this is a time of change.
Yeah, those Confederate statues are so. There's a lot of Confederate flags in Vermont too. I mean, you guys live outside of Burlington and see more of this stuff, but it's repulsive. There's a good Union history.
There are people, like somebody on the radio the other day was talking about their heritage that it represents.
Yeah, right.
And they don't have the
Their
sensitivity
heritage
of
is
slavery.
racism and treason, damn them.
The heritage was slavery.
Yeah.
And our heritage was, same thing.
Mm-hmm. You break America down. All the glory that we learned in kindergarten on upwards. Make it real simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This country was founded on genocide, expanded on genocide.
Yeah.
It came of age under slavery, and that includes the North, because who turned all that cotton into fabric for the world's markets?
Yeah.
You have to go no farther than the mills in Winooski for that answer.
Your relatives and my relatives.
The North made big profits on that.
Yeah.
And we maintain it by empire by force of arms, the same way that Rome did. And like Rome, we're starting to get way overextended.
Yeah.
We just got jealous of the British power.
So as we start to run out of time, I want to remind people of one thing.
Oh, yeah.
Some people will say, well, all this stuff you guys do, does it do any good? Well, we haven't won yet. But think about this. You think about how much worse it would be if the various organizations were not out in the streets, in the halls of Congress, in the churches, civic organizations, schools, and anywhere else they can speak their perception of reality and truth. How much worse it would be if there was no opposition. So what you need to do, if you have any hope for America to become what it can become so actually somewhat easily, get involved. And if you hate politics, get involved with Little League or get involved with teaching a refugee English. But get involved in something. For us, we're going to say get involved in politics because politics is what changes things. But if you do nothing, you get nothing. And they're so overwhelming with Trump's tweets and media barrages that he says this, but then the next day he says the opposite. Nobody knows. It's too much information.
And
so we will see you
again
in 1 month with a new show. Enjoy the weather. Good being with you.
And elect some
Thanks,
leaders
guys.
who'll listen.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for being here.
Elect some leaders who'll listen.
All right, thanks a lot.